Hello and welcome to the Green 19 podcast. I'm Dominique Yates, joined by Tom Silverstein and Ryan Wood. After the Vikings get the job done against the Packers, winning 27-25, the Packers are 11-5 on the season. They did make a push in the fourth quarter, but overall, this was pretty much all the Vikings. So let's just run through this game and some takeaways. And I will start with you, Tom. Just general observations and thoughts on what you saw out there tonight.
The Vikings are good. You're a good football team.
Yeah.
They're really talented.
Yeah.
Much better than I thought they were.
Oh, yeah.
That's all
Me too.
They're really good.
The lone guy. The lone guy who picked the Vikings. So have your moments, Spoon. Have your moment.
Yeah, I am. I'm basking in it right now. They played like a 13-2 team, and the Packers played like I don't know, 8-7 team or something like that. They won it every single element of the game. And, you know, though the Packers made it close at the end, I don't think it was ever in danger. The Vikings had an answer for virtually everything the Packers did. And they are so well coached that I think they just dominated on both sides.
Yeah. Ryan, same thing for you, just, general observations.
I'd like to personally thank Mr. Silverstein for allowing me to actually have the privilege of sitting down without a sore ass, because he deserves to kick it. I had crow tonight for dinner. It was a full helping of crow. The Vikings are a better team than the Packers. Let me just say that emphatically. That's clear. No question about it. I was wrong, emphatically. No question about it. Obviously, I'm surprised. So let's talk about what surprised me from this game. I'm surprised that Sam Darnold is a better quarterback right now than Jordan Love. Didn't see that coming. And it wasn't, look, Sam Darnold had all of his weapons. Jordan Love didn't. I think one of the things that surprised me today is Christian Watson's absence in this offense is a heck of a lot bigger right now than I expected it to be, because without Christian Watson, they had no verticality whatsoever, no downfield threat. Sam Darnold was able to complete 4 passes, 3 of them to receivers, of 4 different guys, 3 receivers, of at least 20 yards. Jordan Love had 1 guy, Tucker Kraft. Everyone else, and this was until midway through the fourth quarter. Let's be clear. Going into the fourth quarter, Jordan Love was averaging 3.55 yards per pass. It's astounding how seismic Christian Watson, the one reliable deep threat in this offense, is his absence was. I mean, we talk about the depth of this offense all the time. It turns out the most irreplaceable receiver in this offense is Christian Watson. But it wasn't just that Sam Darnold had all of his weapons. The Packers actually had some pass rush in this game. Time and time again, Sam Darnold made plays. He escaped pressure. He found guys to dump it off to. He was able to hit when big plays were there. He completely outplayed Jordan Love. I did not see that happening. And you look at where this Packers team is right now. They have beaten everybody on their schedule they're supposed to beat, and they have beaten nobody on their schedule with a better record than them. What you call that in the NFL is mediocre. And they'll have time left this season, because they are going to the playoffs, to prove that they are not a mediocre team. And we'll see. But what they have done to this point in this conference, which, yes, they have 11 wins, but the reality is in this conference, it's going to take 12 wins to get into the playoffs most likely. What they've done on the resume is mediocre.
Tom, is there anything that did surprise you? I know you picked the Vikings to win, but were there anything that you saw tonight that kind of stood out that you weren't expecting or did expect?
I thought the Vikings, I just thought they had a better game plan, really on both sides of the ball, but more so on offense. I think they were truly concerned about the Packers pass rush. I think they had concerns about their offensive line being able to go toe-to-toe with the Packers pass rush, which it had been over time. And they just loaded up the line of scrimmage and said, hey, we'll send three guys out there, 4 guys out there. And as long as Sam Darnold has all day to throw, he's going to beat you. You know, Justin Jefferson's going to get open. Jordan Addison's going to get open. Jalen Naylor, one of those guys is going to get open. And we don't need 5 guys going out into routes. So they left their backs in, they left their tight ends in. And how do you beat 6 guys with 4 guys? I'm not really sure. They know so much about Jeff Hafley that he's never going to blitz. Now, how do you blitz with, with Jerry Alexander out, Quay Walker out, Evan Williams out? And I think really big loss was Zane Anderson because he went out on special teams. If he would have been able to stay at safety, then Nixon would have been able to stay outside. And then they could have done a little bit of blitzing because you trust Nixon to be able to cover some guys man to man if you have to. But you can't really trust Valentine and Stokes to do that consistently. So I think that changed a lot when Anderson went out. They really need Evan Williams back. They need Quay Walker back. Losing Devontae Wyatt didn't help any because he's one of the only guys who can get some pressure on his own. And O'Connell is just a step ahead of LaFleur. And I think that was the case on defense too. I know I'm babbling, but I'm going to throw something out there that might sound ridiculous, but I think they've relied too much on Josh Jacobs. And now they've got to figure out how to get their passing game going. I think they probably, Matt LaFleur could answer this better, but I think they've got it where their receivers are so locked into blocking, they're tight splits. I just don't know if they're running, the offense that they were running at the end of last year. And I'd be curious to hear what LaFleur has to say about that at some point.
Hey, Spoon, first of all, I'm not going to say anything you say is ridiculous the rest of the season because who am I? Who am I to insinuate that you're making a ridiculous statement after today? But I truly don't think that that's ridiculous at all. I had the same thought. They found something in the fourth quarter, and I understand at that point. It's kind of like the Vikings play with their food a little bit, right? And that's what they tend to do. And I think from Minnesota's standpoint, look, this is a team that you got to think has a very realistic shot at going to a Super Bowl, doing something the Vikings haven't done in a very long time. If they don't, they do have a tendency to kind of play with their food a little bit, as we've talked about the Packers. But they found something in that fourth quarter when it just looked like they freed up the passing game and let Jordan Love kind of just sling it around. And they got away from Josh Jacobs. And I do think it's a difficult marriage when you have this identity as an offense to be a rough and tumble, beat you in the mouth, beat you in the trenches, beat you with Josh Jacobs, physicality running game, and a really talented quarterback that can make big plays like Jordan Love. How to get the best out of both worlds, that can be complex. And it sure seems like it is. And I did think that even though it was a prevent type defense at the end, even though the Vikings were protecting a 3-score lead in the fourth quarter when all this started, Josh Jacobs said that after the game, he felt like he didn't want to give away the secrets. And we'll see if this could very well be a throwaway line that means nothing. But he said that he thought that the Packers learned what to do against a team like this. I think a big part of that going away from here is even if your run game's your identity, it's still a passing league. The discrepancy between the Vikings and the Packers passing game, the explosiveness, the efficiency, was the difference in the game today. They've still got to be able to generate those big plays with Jordan Love's arm.
I think about this through 3 quarters. Jordan Love had 64 passing yards. Sam Darnold had 312. It was not even like they weren't even on the same playing field at this point in the game. So I know the defense gave up 27 points. I know they gave up the first 30-plus yard, you could say, pass in this game. Jalen Naylor had a big performance as well. Justin Jefferson, he led the way in receiving. I know it was 27 points. I felt the Packers lost this game because of the offense. Do you guys, I don't know, agree or disagree? Do you think it was more defense, or do you think it was about the offense to why the Packers lost this game tonight?
Oh, I think it was offense. I thought their offense stunk. I mean, how do you win a game with 3 points in the first half, and then you even leave 3 points out there when you go for it for some reason on fourth down? Yeah, I'm absolutely, the offense was at fault. I thought the defense did what it could. I think Halfley needed to take a few more chances. But it seemed like the Vikings were just not going to let them. They weren't going to let Edgerrin Cooper blitz. They weren't going to let Kenny Clark get one-on-ones with Garrett Bradbury. They just weren't going to do it, and it was a great game plan.
For you, Ryan, are you in a similar boat, different boat, I guess, in terms of why the Packers lost?
Yeah, I felt the same way. The defense, and by the end of the game, you can't say the defense was good. They gave up 27 points. They had miraculously a chance to actually give this team a real shot at a comeback. Up 20, down 27-25, 3 timeouts left, 2-minute warning. All they had to do was not let the Vikings get 2 first downs, and the Packers had the ball with momentum on offense, needing a field goal to win. So the defense was not good. But watching this game, I absolutely feel like so much of the defense crumbling was because it's very difficult on that side of the ball in this league to support all the way. And they supported all the way in that first half. Gave up 13 points, and really it was remarkable that it wasn't more in the first half. The offense did literally nothing. Stunk is a good word for it. This was as bad of an offense I've seen with Matt LaFleur as the play-calling head coach and his time here in a big game. It was putrid. You can't put that much pressure on your defense and expect it to just be fine. This is a legitimate top 10 Packers defense that they have. They are a good defense, but a good defense can't do everything. You got to be a special elite type defense to be able to support that kind of pressure. The Packers aren't quite that. So, no, I had a hard time killing the Packers defense for this one. I think the offense was just really, really bad.
Yeah, I guess that was really the name of the game with the turnover on downs, the 3 and outs. And it reminded me in ways of like earlier in the season where it's almost like they didn't know, you could say, what their identity was on offense. Through this stretch of games, they knew they had to run through Josh Jacobs, but like I said, Brian Flores and that defense just didn't allow it. But as far as with the Packers defense, I mean, if they're not trying to be like finding a silver lining or optimism because they still lost the game. I mean, Edgerrin Cooper, without question, continues to show he has a chance to be, just really special. And Spoon, were you able to? I think you were able to catch up with Cooper just after the game. I guess what were your takeaways from maybe his conversation and just his thoughts on the game and just how he's been playing?
Well, he was a force in the run game. I mean, he had 4 tackles for loss. I mean, he was in Aaron Jones's pocket, all game long. And I think he had 10 tackles. He's got like 23 tackles in the last 3 games. He's a major league player that they have to continue to highlight. I asked him, well, why didn't they blitz you more? And he said, every time I lined up, like I was going to blitz, they slid the protection to me. So they're darn well aware of Edgerrin Cooper. Teams are. And, I do think they would benefit from having Quay Walker back. I just think he's more physical and probably a little better in coverage than Eric Wilson. And then maybe that allows Edgerrin Cooper to do a few more things. But he can't do it by himself. It's, he's a really good player, and that's all fine and good. But they need more guys to show up, more guys to have impact plays. Some of their lesser guys. I mean, I don't mean to degrade them, but like an Aaron Mosby, he was in Darnold's face quite a bit. Carl Brooks continues to be disruptive every time he's on the field. Those guys, you can't say they don't have talent there, but Javon Bullard started at safety, or went in at safety after Anderson got hurt. He just didn't look like he was right. He looked like he was moving very well. So that was a tough thing for them, and I think it also affected them that if he would have been in the slot, maybe they planned on blitzing him more, or using him more and run support. I don't know, but they were kind of thin.
Yeah, I mean, Bullard made the point. I mean, he was already limited in reps in practice, and in those limited reps, he was working on slot. So to get thrown into the mix at safety, he just kind of admitted there were some things he just, wasn't prepared for. And I do want to go back to a point really quickly. You talked about without having Quay Walker. You might need to watch some film on it, but I was curious that first touchdown where Naylor got behind the defense with the zone. It was McKinney. What was he like stepping up? He thought the middle wasn't covered, and he got in the back. I wonder about that.
I think it was cover 3, and Carrington Valentine bit on the up route. If you're in, and I'll have to go back and look at it, but if you're in cover 3, your area is that third, and so they send that sucker route right in front of you to make you think, okay, I got to come up and cover this. But it's really McKinney's route, and your job is to get deep in case somebody comes into your area, which is where Naylor was going, right into his area. So I think it was on Valentine. I mean, I'm interested. I think that's a play we'll go over with Leroy. But yeah, I think that was on Valentine.
Okay. Ryan, earlier during your opening kind of observations, you talked about there was more pass rush. Who were some of the guys that you even saw out there and observed that, kind of caught your attention on getting some pressure on Darnold? I mean, I think they had the one sack from Carl Brooks, but like you kind of alluded to, they were in Darnold's face quite a bit.
Well, it was by committee. Let's see. Kenny Clark had a pressure, force a throwaway. Rashawn Gary on third down early, blew up a play. Xavier McKinney had one. Carl Brooks had one. It was everybody. We know Edgerrin Cooper can get after the quarterback. He's shown that, even though not as much today. This was a third straight good game for the Packers pass rush. The reality is that when they didn't finish enough, and when you're getting pressure, you're not finishing sacks, I think that is where you start to, you can only become so thin in the secondary. The reality is that Sam Darnold was finding open guys under pressure a lot today. And so you start to think about not having Jair Alexander, obviously. You start to think about not having Evan Williams, losing Zane Anderson, who's played very well in as an emergency starter. There's only so many hits you can take before you start to show those cracks in the hole. And I think you saw that from the Packers secondary today. If they can ever get all their guys back, maybe it's different. But at this point with Jair Alexander, I mean, you almost got to remind yourself he's part of the team, right? I probably going to be like that the rest of the year. Who knows when that guy's going to play, if that guy's going to play again. So you can't certainly count on it. I thought that, the pass rush was present today. The secondary was thin.
Darnold, he really was good. I couldn't get over his play. I really couldn't get over it. Because I guess what was so fascinating to me was, I guess that was part of where those times they didn't have the pass rush, to see how long he held the ball. Like, he was bouncing, he was looking, he was going through a lot of progressions, but some of those throws were just money. They really were. He even showed me. I always thought he was solid, but he showed me something, and I could say this offseason he's going to get paid. That's not really a question, but he signed a 1-year deal back in March, and for $10 million, and have a feeling that figure will rise just quite a bit with this offseason.
Yeah, you just have to have an offensive line around him, and even I do think if they hadn't max protected most of the day, it might have been a little bit of a different story because he does hold the ball. But if you're going to keep 7 guys in and say, go ahead, Sam, hold it until Justin Jefferson gets open or Naylor gets open or Hawkinson, why not? Because he is super accurate and he's really good at avoiding pressure. I mean, not just pressure, but guys reaching their hands out and trying to pull him down. He knows how to dip and move and step up, and he was just on top of it today.
That's the luxury you have when you know that you have guys who will get open. When you know that your guys will create that separation, you can max protect. And that was very much missing in the Packers offense today. After the game, I asked Jordan Love, game like this, you're not getting anything deep. What gives? And earlier, Matt LaFleur said that the Vikings played more man-to-man coverage than they had anticipated, which is a wise choice on their part, considering their best receiver, their toughest matchup in man coverage, it wasn't on the field. Christian Watson, 6'4", 4'3". He's a bear in man coverage. He can blow the top off. It's tough to play man against him. Vikings didn't have to worry about that. So it's not a coincidence that they went in with the man coverage. But I asked Jordan Love, what do you do? And he took ownership, as he should. The great example that when they went for it on 4th and 2 at the 23-yard line, it was a drop for Jaden Reed, pure and simple. He has to make that catch. But it wasn't a good ball from Jordan Love either. He put it low. He put it wide. Made Jaden Reed have to go out and get it. Didn't hit him in stride. Hits him in stride, that's probably not a drop. So it is both, right? Jordan Love said he's got to be super sure of his placement with the ball. He's got to be better. But he also said it's one-on-one matchups. You got to win. We didn't do that enough today. He challenged his receivers, as I thought he should, as not only the quarterback but a leader of this team. You got to win your one-on-one matchups more. The Packers absolutely did not do it enough. The Vikings did, and that's why they were able to max protect.
Did it surprise you, Ryan, that Jordan made that comment, kind of telling the receivers to take ownership?
I think that we've seen him. I found it very fascinating with the how much he's leaned into the Toyota-thon thing. I think over the last month, we've seen Jordan Love kind of expand his personality. We've seen him expand his voice. This was another example of that today. And I think it is what every team wants from its quarterback. He's transitioning from being that young player, which every young player, even a quarterback, you come in, you keep your head low, you stay quiet, you make plays, you earn it. He's transitioning from that phase to he knows he has a voice, he has a presence in this locker room, on this offense, this team as a whole, and he is using it more and more. That was another example, but I think he's growing in that direction.
Well, I know a lot of Packers fans on Twitter had fun with the comment, said that was very Aaron Rodgers-esque in terms of when he made that comment. But again, that was leadership. But for you, Spoon, I guess what were your thoughts just on that comment that he said that, he needs to take ownership, but it comes down to receivers winning one-on-ones? You feel like it was a fair comment?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't think there were very many open receivers. Towards the end, they did, but that was when they got into a passing mode, and that's what sort of leads me to how they're marrying, Joseph with the pass game, and I don't think they're doing a very good job of it. And I think they did a phenomenal job of getting Malik Willis involved with the run game and all of that stuff, and then getting Jacobs all the carries he needs and the gap scheme stuff that they put in. But for some reason, they've the passing game. I don't really see them scheming guys open either. I mean, sometimes you gotta, if you can't get anyone open, then you figure out a way to scheme them open. And I don't really see them doing that. But I think he's right. When a team plays man to man on you, you got to win, and you got to win more than they are winning. I don't know what's happened to Jaden Reed, but he's just kind of disappeared. He had the one big catch, was that against New Orleans, I think, last week. But how do you go with, what did he have, 6 yards or 16 yards? I don't even remember what it was. He's got to be a major part of their offense every game, and he's just kind of floating into Netherland.
Yeah, it was very interesting to see that. And, Dobbs was able to get some things going. Wicks had a couple of catches here and there. But, yeah, when you looked at the Vikings, you saw Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, Hockenson. You saw their guys step up and make those catches and make those plays. The Packers just didn't get enough of that. I don't know, with special teams, I don't know, is Whelan, is he seen a funk? I don't know. What do you kind of – is anything special teams wise that you guys saw, or any observations on that side? Even though it wasn't like a huge factor in the game, was there anything like that you saw?
Well, it was a factor in Cooper being off sides on that field goal. Now, he swears that he wasn't. He thinks he checked with the official, but he didn't remember for sure whether he did. It was very borderline. But, in that situation, a 55-yard field goal, make sure you're behind the line. There's no reason to try to cheat on that one. And Whelan, I don't know. Yeah, he's in a funk. How do you kick a 30-yard punt indoors? I don't know if he's just trying too hard or what the deal is, but, yeah, they need more from him for sure.
Yeah, I thought, this isn't special teams, but I thought at the time, and it sure played out this way, I thought Matt LaFleur made a mistake early in the game, kicking that chip shot field goal, 4th and 3 at the 4-yard line. It was so – I couldn't – the inconsistency in his when to be aggressive, when to be conservative, is hard for me to follow to that. They win the opening coin toss. Matt LaFleur takes the ball because he remembers two things. One, 28-0. This is the hole they fell into week 4 against this team at Lambeau Field. 2, the last 2 weeks they've drawn it out to a 14-0 lead both times. Just playing with the lead, especially when you have the run game they do, how important that is. So he was very determined to get that early lead. And then it didn't exactly work out the way that he expected because Josh, they're in Vikings territory. Josh Jacobs fumbles, loses a fumble. You want to talk about the Packers defense holding its own. I mean, for them to force a stop on sudden change like that was the situation this Packers defense for years would have struggled in. And I thought that was a really impressive moment for them. And a couple possessions both sides go by, and it's still a 0-0 game. And now the Packers have 4th and 3 at the 4-yard line. And in this type of game against two good teams, touchdowns are at a premium. You're on the doorstep of asserting that 7-0 lead, and they decide to kick a 22-yard field goal. I didn't think that was the right call then, but to compound it later, going for 4th and 2 at the 23, when you've already established this plan of attack where you're going to capitalize on any scoring opportunities, you want the points, you need the points, and then not to kick the field goal there when if you don't go for 4th and 3 at 4, then you don't go for 4th and 2 at the 23. I thought it was kind of all over the place, and watching it live, I think both situations you go for it, frankly. But if you don't go for it the first, I don't see why you go for it the second.
Yeah, that was actually going to be one of my questions. So same for you, Spoon. Thoughts on both of those 4th down attempts, that you say one that they didn't go for, the other that they did.
Yeah, I agree with Ryan. I think if you The comment I would have about the second one is by then you've seen a lot of what the Vikings are doing. You have a better idea of what their coverages are playing. And if you have a really good play that you like at that juncture, that's a reason. But it didn't look like they had a fail-safe play. And, I think LaFleur's answer to that was that it was a gut feeling to go for it. And I just don't think you can do stuff on gut feelings. I think you've got to have, okay, we got a really good play here. We've set it up, on this drive. They're not doing this, or they're playing us this way. And then decide. And then, in a game like that, I just think points are too valuable to risk it. And I know you're supposed to go for the touchdown on the road. But I just thought they had a chance to at least, put up some points after that long drive. And yeah, it ended up not being a good decision.
You are supposed to go for touchdowns on the road, which is why you go for 4th and 3 at the 4, right? But then if you're not going for touchdowns on the road, then send the consistent message from the sideline that, hey, we're going to trust the defense. It's going to be a low-scoring game. We're going to take the points. And to not do that, and I get that the play was there. Jordan Love didn't make the throw. Jade Reed dropped the pass he should have caught. But it wasn't. I didn't think it was the right messaging from the sideline. I'll tell you this: Dan Campbell would have gone for it,
and he would have known what to run. Ben Johnson, and they would have known the play. They would have had their play that they would have ran in that situation with no hesitation.
Yeah, I don't want to. They go for it on times when they shouldn't, and they don't get it, and they put themselves in bad positions. But they are consistent. They're going to go for it. Everybody knows they're going to go for it. So, your players, you're right, your players have a good feel for what's going to happen. If it's 4th and 2, they know you're going for it. I don't think the Packers offense has any idea what he's going to do when they get in those situations. And, I don't know.
Yeah, it is. Go ahead, Ryan. Go ahead.
That inconsistency, this is the point I'm trying to make. That inconsistency to me was the biggest problem. Like, okay, I thought they should have gone for 4th and 3 from the 4. But if you don't, if you establish that, then you kick the field goal the next time too. You do both the same time because they're the same situation. And in fact, you want to split hairs. The time that he kicked the field goal is the time when you really should have gone for, because at the 23-yard line, 4th and 2, there's still work that's got to be done to get in the end zone at that point, even if you pick it up. You're at the 4-yard line. You got one play to get in the end zone. You got one play for 7. In the worst-case scenario, you're thinking the Vikings, if you don't get it, they're inside their own 5. You're helping your defense then. But if Matt LaFleur would have kicked the field goal the second time, I could have, okay. That he emphasized the points. He was being consistent. It might not be what I thought was best, but you trust the coach in that situation because he's consistent. You can understand that, even if it's different than how you might see it. But the lack of consistency, that surprised me.
It is interesting. Obviously you hate to do the what if game because it could have went anyway. But even if they went for it the first time at the 4, they get the touchdown at 7-0. Then Naylor gets his touchdown, it's tied at 7. Maybe you kick the field goal, you might be looking at 10-7 Packers. Like, who knows? Anything could have happened in those situations. But if you had an idea of what you wanted to deal with, maybe it could have been a totally different story.
How much they lose by?
Yeah.
The 3 would have mattered. They lost by 2, right? And you can't play that game. Who knows how the rest of the game would have unfolded? I get that. I'm not saying revisionist history here. We don't believe in that, but
who knows, right? Yeah. As we wrap it up, before we started the podcast, the Commanders were able to win with the Falcons clinching a playoff spot. So I guess moving forward, what does that mean? So the Packers would be the 7 seed. Regardless, they would have to go on the road. But so as of now, they would be a 7 seed. And again, moving forward, they're going to have to be, you say road warriors regardless, because that's going to have to be their path.
Well, it's a big deal. If Washington wins next week, then they lock up the 6th seed, and the Packers are the 7th seed and go to Philadelphia. They had a chance to make it easier on themselves and only have to play maybe Philadelphia or Detroit. Well, they probably have to play them both. But, going to Philadelphia is not going to be like going to Atlanta or going to Tampa Bay. So, they better hope Mike McCarthy does them a big favor next week and beats Washington. But I don't see that happening. I'm sure the Packers will beat the Bears, but they're off to Philly after that.
If I could make one argument here, and I'll make very clear, you'd much rather be the 5 seed going to the NFC South than going to Philadelphia, period. I think the Eagles have a really interesting decision to make next week because my understanding, and I don't have it in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that the Eagles are locked into that too, right? The Vikings and Lions play next week for the 1 seed. There's nothing the Eagles can gain by playing Jalen Hurts next week. Now, who knows what they do, but if it's a game that you have nothing to play for and you got a quarterback coming off a concussion, do you throw him out there? I don't know. And then if you don't, I think it's missing 2.5 games, and then you throw Jalen Hurts out in a wild card game. It's reasonable to think there might be some rust there. Now, Philadelphia they got a darn good defense. They got Saquon Barkley. They are tougher than an NFC South team. They're tougher than the Rams if they were the 6th seed. But if you subscribe to the theory that at some point you got to go to Philadelphia anyway, I do think you'd rather go in that situation, the wild card round, when Jalen Hurts might have some rust that he's got to knock off. And I thought the Commanders, if they're the 7th seed, if you got to catch Philadelphia at some point, you want to do it in that situation. Then later on in the playoffs, potentially, if Jalen Hurts knocks off that rust and isn't playing at the top of his game. So that's the one silver lining potentially. But at the end of the day, yeah, you want the easiest path. And to knock it, to potentially line it up where your road to the Super Bowl now might be Philadelphia, Detroit, or Minnesota, and then the championship game, Detroit or Minnesota. You got to play the 3 teams that have beaten you this season in consecutive weeks to get to the Super Bowl. I think any week the Packers could potentially go in and beat any of these teams once. I mean, you can't say that they'd be the underdog. They should be. They haven't shown it, but you can't say it's inconceivable that they win a 1-game format against one of these teams. To beat all 3 of them, that's an extremely tall. I don't know how they navigate that path.
Yeah, I know. Spoon, I wasn't here. Would that be what was the path like in 2010? Because I know they weren't great. Like their seed was fairly low, and they had to put on a run. Would it be somewhat similar this year?
They won all 3 games on the road on the way there. Their first game was against Philadelphia, and they were underdogs, and Michael Vick was the quarterback. But Philadelphia was nowhere near as dominant. I don't think they were as good as this team. Then they went to Atlanta and played I think Atlanta was the number 1 seed. And they beat, Rodgers played the best game of his life. And then they went to Chicago and beat Chicago there in a real barn burner. I mean, I shouldn't say that, a slugfest. And so I think the road to the Super Bowl is a lot harder for this year than it was back then.
It'll be interesting. Any other final words or thoughts, guys, as we wrap up this show? If not.
No, other than, look, at the end of the day, there's still season left to be played, and it's real easy right now for every right reason to say, look, Packers are clearly number 4 in the NFC, and I think there's a big 4 in the NFC. They're clearly 4th. And right now they are. But ultimately this team will have a chance to go out there and prove that they're not. And it's what they do with that chance that's going to matter. So they're going to be the underdog against any of the top 3 teams in this conference, period. But that's why you play the game.
It's a great way of looking at it. I mean, you can say they're a good team, just not a great team. And a lot of those, it's just a lot of small mistakes you just can't make against good teams, having too many men on the field, offsides calls, and the pre-snap penalties. Those are just those type of mistakes you can't make, especially when you're going to be playing really good teams and you're going to be on the road. So, again, that was pretty much the name of the game, and that is why the Packers lost 27-25 to the Vikings, 11-5 on the season. Wrap up the regular season in Lambeau Field, taking on the Bears. Thank you, guys, and thank you all for checking out the Green 19 podcast. For Ryan Wood, Tom Silverstein, I'm Dominique Yates.